for the greatest, for the greatest, for the greatest Nigerian students. I didn't hear you. Were greatest big beam, greatest bang bang, greatest boom boom. I'm still one of you. As was a struggle. I struggled between 1975 and 1980 at the University of Ife. So it's always a case of a luta continua, Victoria Asceta. When I was told to choose a topic, I told the university authorities to choose one for me because I did not want to choose a controversial topic that is politically loaded because of the nature of a university. I sent 3 proposals. They looked at them and we were able to agree on one. And that is the university as a catalyst for societal development. And I think, and I think this meets our needs, the very reason we are all here. Why are we here? Where are we coming from? And when we leave here, where do we want to go to? So I start by saying, by the way, I have a paper, the lecture which I've given to the Vice Chancellor is 66 pages. But I will try to do justice to it in 40-45 minutes. Universities are not merely centers of instruction, as many people think. No. They are engines of transformation. They are positioned at the crossroads of knowledge, innovation, and culture. Universities train human beings, and that means human capital. They generate research. They shape socio-economic development while nurturing civic values and democratic engagement. In societies facing instability, poverty, and inequality, universities become crucibles of critical thought and reform, producing graduates who are not only employable, but also socially responsible. Across history and from time immemorial, universities have therefore stood as catalysts for change. It was universities that incubated the Renaissance. It was universities that propelled the great scientific revolution. And today, it is the universities that are powering the digital age. So beyond technology, the universities stand as molders of character, refiners of values, and they produce leaders capable of services and sacrifices in their various fields. So in this sense, therefore, the health of a university or the health of a nation is closely mirrored with the vitality of its university system. Where universities thrive, therefore, society flourishes with innovation, and progress. The way Chinua Achebe will describe it in his epic, Things Fall Apart, like a yam tendering in the rainy season. But where universities falter, society stagnates in ignorance and decay. Yet, this catalytic potential is constrained by many, many factors. Underfunding, weak or no autonomy, poor industry linkages, especially in developing contexts. To unlock their potentials, therefore, universities must be repositioned through sustained investment, stronger governance, and robust partnerships with government, industry, and the civil society. Ultimately, the university is not just an enclave, but the beating heart of national destiny, the conscience, the compass, and the catalyst of societal development. If we agree with these introductory remarks, can you say, I? Thank you very much. Having taken off, we look at certain concepts which this topic brings about or brings forth. Universities, social transformation, human capital, innovation, higher education policy, sustainable development, and civic engagement. I will take a look at some of these concepts in our discourse this afternoon. University. A university is far more than a cluster of buildings, like the beautiful buildings here, in the other legacy, in the other one, your 3 campuses. But a university is more than these buildings, where lectures are delivered, examinations set and conducted and passed. At the essence of a university, it is an institution of higher learning and research, uniquely mandated to generate, preserve, and disseminate knowledge across all disciplines. Unlike earlier stages of education, which merely focused on the absorption of established facts, the university emphasizes inquiry, critique, and innovation. It is the arena where theories are tested, where discoveries are made, and where societies are equipped with the intellectual capital and rigor required for progress and transformation. It took its name from the Latin word or phrase of universitas magistrorum et scholarum, which means a community of teachers and scholars. So the university represents a fellowship of minds devoted to truth, to dialogue, to discovery, to innovation. It is therefore not merely a transmitter of knowledge, but also a creator of knowledge, serving as both a timeless custodian of wisdom and a timely responder to the needs of each age. That is what a university is. Education. Education comes within the periphery or within the compass of a university. And education is the systematic process of imparting and acquiring knowledge, skills, and values, whether formally or informally. It equips all of you, all of us here, with reasoning ability, with judgment, with intellectual maturity. While formal education occurs in structured settings such as schools and universities, informal education that we knew before now is embedded in family, community, and social interactions. At all levels, therefore, education provides the foundation for personal growth, civic responsibility, and societal development. What is this societal development itself? Societal development refers to the sustained improvement in a community's well-being and collective capacity. It extends beyond economic growth to include the strengthening of social structures, access to quality public services, institutional resilience, and individual empowerment. True development is therefore inclusive and equitable, ensuring that progress is sustainable and that the needs of present generations and future generations are met without compromising the welfare of the past and the future. And that takes us to human capital development, which is the process of enhancing individuals' knowledge, skills, health, and productivity with a view to unlocking their potentials and contributing to broader economic, socio-economic, and political progress. Human capital development involves deliberate investment in education, training, and healthcare, ultimately producing a workforce that is innovative, competitive, and equipped to drive sustainable national growth. Many of you may not know what we today call the Asian tigers were once poorer than us in the 50s and even in the 60s. When you hear of all this, North Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, those countries, they were even poorer than us. But their leaders did one thing. They invested seriously in human capital development, in technology, and in infrastructure. They decided to give a very conducive environment for local industries to grow. Before you knew what was happening, these countries have migrated. Any of you had ever been to some of these countries, you will see that whilst we are called a developing country, maybe we have escaped the third world. These are countries that are now fully developed, like any of the developed Western worlds. It is due to partly investment in human capital. So let's have a little bird's eye view of global universities and tertiary institutions. The modern university, as we are seeing here today, like Benson Idahosa University, BIU, is the product of centuries of intellectual struggle, cultural refinement, and institutional evolution. Its catalytic role in societal progress can only be understood when you trace his historical origins to know where we are actually coming from. Because if you don't know where you are coming from, you can't know where you are or why you are here or where you are going to. That is why the average vehicle, car, has two mirrors, very important to a journey. The front mirror, which is the windscreen, very large, to enable you peer into the future, to see the front of where you are going to, so that you don't stumble. But by the side of the car, you will see a side mirror. A side mirror periscopes the past, the back, so that you know whether a crazy person, for example, without brakes, is pursuing you. So it is the today we talked about yesterday, or rather it is the tomorrow we talked about yesterday. That is the today. Today is the tomorrow we discussed yesterday. So for us to therefore know how and why we are here, this little history has become necessary. And I take us back to the ancient foundations of higher education, which emerged in ancient centers of learning, such as the Platonic Academy in Athens, the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, and the schools of philosophy in India and China. Though not universities in the modern sense, they created traditions of advanced learning, debate, and preservation of knowledge that influenced later institutions. And the University Bologna in the medieval European history was founded in 1088 and is often considered the first modern university. It was initially focused only on Roman law, and it was organized as a universitas, that is a guild of students and masters. Then followed the University of Paris in 1150, excelling in theology and philosophy, coming closely or followed closely by Oxford, Cambridge, Salamanca, and Heidelberg. Soon, these became key intellectual hubs in the world. So early universities were closely tied to the church, like this church, with theology as the queen of the sciences. But they also nurtured scholasticism and critical inquiry, laying the foundations for Renaissance. We now look at the period of Renaissance, humanism, and scholarly revolution. During the Renaissance and Enlightenment, universities expanded beyond religious studies to embrace literature, science, and the arts. Humanist thinkers like Petrarch, Boccaccio, and Lorenzo Valla challenged scholastic traditions, promoting grammar, rhetoric, poetry, and moral philosophy and history. By the 15th century, humanities entered the academia, reshaping disciplines like medicine and natural philosophy. This fusion of humanism and scholarship paved the way for the scientific revolution of 1543 to 1687. So by the 17th and 18th centuries, therefore, universities became centers of scientific discovery. Figures many of us here have heard of, like Galileo, Isaac Newton, who developed the law of motion, and Descartes, a great philosopher, advanced transformative theories that fueled the Industrial Revolution. Continental universities in Italy, Germany, and Scotland embraced this role, while Oxford and Cambridge remained more conservative, leaving institutions like the Royal Society to spearhead scientific research in England. The German Research University came up in the 19th century, which was exemplified by the University of Berlin under Wilhelm von Humboldt. Its principles, unity of teaching and research, academic freedom, and the pursuit of truth became the template for the modern research university. And this has influenced universities worldwide and shaped contemporary higher education template. Let's come back from there to here. Africa's pioneering heritage. Let me say that long before colonialism, Africa nurtured advanced systems of education that rivaled, and in some cases even preceded their European counterparts. For example, the Academy of Alexandria in 4th century BC to 7th century AD served as both a library and an intellectual hub, shaping knowledge across the Mediterranean. The University of Al-Qarawiyyin, 859 AD in Morocco, and Al-Azhar University, 970 AD in Egypt, remain to date among the world's oldest and most influential centers of higher learning. Coming back nearer home, West Africa, Timbuktu flourished between the 12th and 16th centuries with institutions like Sankore Madrasa, attracting thousands of students in law, theology, astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. Ethiopia also sustained a unique scholarly tradition through gaze-based monist schools and theological academics for over 2,700 years. They emphasized literacy, history, and philosophy. Together, these traditions affirm that Africa was not a passive recipient of Western education, but also a custodian and pioneer of intellectual traditions that shaped civilizations globally. It is very necessary to point this out, because the belief of many people is that it was only when the white man came with the Bible in one hand and the gun in the other hand that education actually started. It is not true. Even in Benin here, as far back as the 14th century, even before Oba Ewai, Oba Ozola, Oba Overami Nogbaise, before then, before the British punitive expedition of 1897, wherein the great Oba Overami was deported and exiled to Calabar, where he lived for 27 years before he died, we already had education. The Portuguese that visited Benin in the 14th century said they met a well-organized society with an Oba at the apex and the traditional institution with cabinet chiefs that decided cases. And the Benin streets were paved with light. I'm talking about light, NEPA, that we can't still have today. By 14th century, Benin here already had light. They said they were powered by palm oil, as reported by the Portuguese explorers. So when we hear of the white man's narrative, we have to begin to reject it. It is that narrative that made them to teach us in history that during the time of the discoverers, Mungo Park discovered the river Niger at Kainji, New Busa. How can you, for God's sake, discover a river where you met the natives drinking the water? And it was these natives taking you with canoes, paddles, canoes. Even when you were going to die of mosquito bite, they were the ones that were taking you. And then you changed the narrative and said, you discovered the river Niger. We must begin to frontally confront such profanity, which is not good for our minds. So, coming back again nearer, I started from the world, go to Africa, go to West Africa. We are back now to Nigeria. The origins of university education can be traced to the establishment in 1930 of the Yaba Higher College. That's the country's first postgraduate secondary school. Alongside it, they specialized in training schools that were involved in government departments. You had others like the Moore Plantation at Ibadan, the Samaru in Zaria campus, veterinary science at VOM, and the engineering in Lagos. So the Yaba Higher College offered courses in engineering, agriculture, medicine, pharmacy, surveying, teaching, commerce, and forestry. Its mission was to train Africans for junior administrative and technical roles, reducing reliance on costly European expatriates. However, the college faced criticism. Nationalists began to argue that its scope was too narrow compared to a true university, that its diplomas lacked international recognition, and that graduates were restricted to junior posts alone, unlike their British counterparts, who advanced into the senior service cadre. This dissatisfaction fueled agitation for a full-fledged Nigerian university. That was why the Asquith and Elliott Commissions of 1943 were set up to review higher education across the whole West African sub-region. Most of the members recommended 3 regional university colleges to be at Ibadan, at Chimota, and the Gold Coast. The minority, however, proposed a single university college at Ibadan with feeder institutions. Britain's Labour Party won a landslide victory. The minority recommendation therefore prevailed because the Labour Party bought into the idea that the University of Ibadan alone, and not with University of Achimota and the Gold Coast, should be the only first university in Nigeria. So it therefore came on board in 1948, affiliated to the University of London. After independence in 1960, but before the 1963 Republican Constitution, a commission was set up headed by Ashby, which assessed Nigerians' educational and manpower needs and recommended expansion beyond that University of Ibadan and Yaba Higher College. Following its report, the following universities were established in Nigeria. University of Nigeria, Nsukka, 1960. University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, 1962. And I am a proud product of that great university. Great Ife. Are you not many? Great Ife. You can hear we are here. Vice Chancellor, sir, we are here. And Vice Chancellor, there used to be only 2 universities in Nigeria. The University of Ife and others. But today I can say the University of Ife and Benson Idahosa University and others. So, these universities of Ife, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ahmadu Bello University, ABU 1962, and the University of Lagos 1962, they all followed the University of Ibadan, and they are called the first generation universities. Expansion, however, continued because the society is ever dynamic. And that led to the establishment of the University of Benin in 1970. That was the first one. And today, the University of Benin, indeed, is one of the leading universities in the world. I will come back to that later. It was accredited by the NUC, National Universities Commission. During the third National Development Plan between 1975 and 1980, the federal government created 7 additional universities: University of Calabar, University of Jos, Maiduguri, Sokoto, Ilorin, Port Harcourt, and Kano. These universities form the second generation universities. By the 1980s, following the creation of 90 states, the federal government sought geographical balance by establishing universities of technology in states without federal universities. This broadened access to higher education and entrenched universities as central pillars of development. Let us briefly look at these frameworks and models so that we can know what to do. Human capital theory was popularized by Theodore Shaw and Gary Becker in the 1960s. And it views human capital, and it views education, training, and health as investments that enhance productivity and generate economic status and returns, much like physical capital. They therefore see universities as central to economic growth, supplying skilled labor, certifying competencies, and producing tacit knowledge and that industries rely on. They justified investments in scholarships, vocational streams, and tertiary education. Governments are wage premiums, productivity gains, and graduate employability as measures of return. However, this theory goes through some criticism because it has limitations. It often treats education as nothing but a private good rather than a public one. It underemphasizes issues of equity and access to education itself and risks narrowing education into purely vocational training at the expense of civic and cultural trainings and responsibility. We have the modernization theory. This emerged in the mid-20th century through thinkers like Walt Rostow. Modernization theory links societal development to processes like industrialization, urbanization, and mass education. This theory sees universities as nothing but engines of modernity, training bureaucrats, scientists, and professionals, diffusing meritorious norms. The theory portrays higher education expansion as both a cause and consequence of modernization. Again, this theory has been critiqued as being too Eurocentric and overly linear because it assumed that all societies must follow a Western trajectory. In practice, increased enrollments alone do not guarantee growth or democratic development. Outcomes depend on institutional quality, equitable access, and labor market absorption. We have the social learning theory, developed by people like Albert Bandura. It emphasizes that people learn not only through direct instruction, like in classrooms, but by observing and modeling others. That's where mentorship comes in. That's why if you're a bad parent, chances are that you will produce bad children. Because the children, as they are growing up, they are watching you. So if you are a couple that engage in fisticuffs, everyday fighting, and your children are watching you, they are learning. They may likely grow up into very bellicose, belligerent, and individuals that want to fight, that want to dominate, because they believe that that is the essence of life, because that is what their mothers and fathers taught them. So this social learning theory has key concepts, which include imitation, role modeling, self-efficacy, and reciprocal determinism, which is the interaction of person, behavior, and environment. And that is why environment also is very important in which you grow up. So if you grow up in a very lonely environment where your parents don't speak to any person, chances are that you are going to grow up as an introvert. If you grow up in a marketplace where you see taxis, motor park, towels every day, you may likely grow up into a brawler, just fighting everybody you see. So environments are very important. So universities are strong sites of social learning because students acquire norms, tacit skills, and professional ethics from faculties, from mentors, from peers, and from institutional culture. For example, there are certain ingrained institutional cultures here within BIU, which the students are not expected to transcend. You must not go beyond this. Practices such as mentorship, research supervision, clinical placements, communities of practice, and student societies foster modeling and imitation. Institutional culture, academic integrity, collegiality, and debates. This also shape conduct. Some of us, for example, I didn't just grow up a human rights activist. and started manifesting the traits in primary school all through secondary school, that at the University of Ife, we were at the forefront of the students' struggle during the Alimo Go crisis of 1978. So this theory therefore underscores the importance of experiential learning opportunities, like through laboratories, internships, mentorships, simulation, imitation. Then we look at the dependency theory, propounded by scholars like Andre Gonda, Frank, and Cardozo and Faleto, which argues that underdevelopment in the global south is structurally produced by unequal integration into the global economy. They believe that resources flow from the periphery to the core, reinforcing dependency. Applied to higher education, the theory suggests universities often merely reproduce dependency by importing curricula, adopting donor-driven research agendas, relying on Western accreditation metrics, and experiencing brain drain. This dynamic undermines intellectual sovereignty. In response, the theory encourages universities to pursue decolonization by building indigenous research agendas, promoting local languages, scholarship, and investing in context-relevant technologies, and fostering South-South knowledge networks. Ultimately, it challenges universities to shift from serving external markets to driving national autonomy and development. Knowledge economic theory. The knowledge economy theory reframes growth around innovation, knowledge, and human capital, rather than physical impulse. University centers and high-tech firms become central to generating and diffusing knowledge. So institutions like OECD, the World Bank, UNESCO have shaped this policy framework. And they believe that universities contribute by conducting basic and applied research, producing skilled graduates, transferring technology through patents and startups. But critics of these concepts of industry partnerships, incubators, transfer offices, TTOs, they caution that commercialization pressures may push universities to prioritize applied research over fundamental inquiry, and that this risk mission drift and deepen inequality of access to innovation. The triple helix model, comprising of universities, industry, and government. The triple helix model views innovation as the product of interactions between universities, industry, and government. Each actor assumes hybrid roles. The universities are the entrepreneurial institutions. The industry is the research partner and funders, while the government provides enabling environment through policy and funding. So this model shows that success depends on cultural norms, institutional capacity, governance, and funding ecosystems. But critics argue that this model of triple helix unduly prioritizes techno-economic goals over social inclusion, and that it risks elite capture in weak institutional contexts. Now, having explained these various concepts of universities, and how they operate. Let us now, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, quickly look at the core functions of universities, which I will not dwell on too much. One is knowledge creation and dissemination through teaching, mentoring, publishing, conferences, and open access platforms, preparing students for workforce, introducing partnerships, internships, and alumni networks. Now, the second one is human capital development, which we have seen, like a young Nigerian, Hamed Kayode Alabi, trained in Ilorin, but who went abroad, came back, and started doing wonders with youth, building youth intellectual hubs. Now, we also have like the Gedo International University in Somalia. And the University of Calabar Teaching Hospital is doing quite a lot in terms of patient care. You have number 3, character formation and values. In this, we believe that a nation thrives, not just on resources, but on citizens of integrity. Universities shape character by instilling values like honesty, responsibility, discipline, and justice. They function as forges of virtue, preparing graduates for principled citizenship alongside technical competence. Research from Iranian universities links moral character to stronger academic and civic outcomes. The University of Birmingham's framework for character education, for example, stresses that character or virtues such as dignity and integrity and empathy are essential for societal functioning. Number 4, research and innovation. Universities help us to generate new knowledge, deepen understanding of diseases, and contribute to breakthroughs in medicine, robotics, artificial intelligence, and policy. We have the 5th one as a hub for economic development. Universities stimulate economies by creating jobs for academics, researchers, and service staff, while also generating demand for local goods and services. By producing skilled graduates and fostering innovation, universities enhance productivity, they attract employers, and increase regional competencies. Civic engagement as number 6. Through programs, partnerships, and students' activities, universities cultivate civic consciousness and social responsibility. They collaborate with governments and non-profit organizations to provide platforms for democratic dialogue and foster exposing the students to diverse backgrounds and to leadership. 7, cultural and global influences. Universities preserve and enrich culture while fostering global understanding. They act as custodians of heritage through archives, museums, and research, while pushing for cultural boundaries through literature, art, and critical scholarship. Diverse student populations promote cross-cultural exchange, strengthening intellectual and intercultural understandings. University, therefore, influences public discourse through performances, exhibitions, and publications. Number 8, social mobility and equity. Universities serve as ladders of opportunity, enabling individuals to transcend the limitations of birth and background. Research from the Sutton Trust shows that higher education dramatically increases the likelihood of upward mobility for disadvantaged students. By offering access to education, skills, and networks, universities disrupt cycles of poverty and narrow class disparities. But for university, a person like me standing in front of you today from a very humble background, a grass to grace story, would not have been standing before you today delivering this lecture. It is because of universities. Political development as number 9. They create crucibles for political leadership, civic activism, and policy expertise. The great African Leadership University in Senghor University, like Fort Hare in South Africa, Mandela and Julius Nyerere were produced there. And of course, you know, the great nationalists in Nigeria were all products of university. From Nnamdi Azikiwe to Obafemi Awolowo, to Ahmadu Bello, to Sardauna of Sokoto, to Tafawa Balewa, to Kingsley Ozuo-Mbadiwe, to Oba Akinzwa II, to Dr. Jereti Mariri, to Dr. Denis Osadebe, Dr. Omimi Ejo, Justice Kensington Momo, all those who fought for the creation, for example, of this Midwest region from Western region on the 8th of August 1963 were all products of universities. Number 10, cultural and social transformations. They promote inclusivity, gender equality, and diversity through policies and leadership, like the Warlike Thailand, Charles Darwin University, Australia, and Honoris United University in Africa. We have also seen others producing leaders such as B.R. Ambedkar in India and all that. So what are the challenges hindering this university's smooth operation? Many of you already know them, but we cannot talk about the story of universities without knowing their problems. Underfunding and infrastructural decay. But for the proactive knowledge or determination of BIU, like Nostradamus, the man who saw tomorrow, we all will be camped here forever, even when the buildings are now getting antiquated. But you have already periscoped into the future, like the Ooni at Ile-Ife that gazes into the future to pronounce the next Ooni to be. You've already gazed into the future that here may not be enough for us in the future. So just like the oracle at Ife that gazes into the future to pronounce the next Ooni to be, the present leadership of BIU and the past leadership decided that here will be too small for us in the future. That is why you have started your expansion. God bless you all. The second one is brain drain of academics. I'm sure, Vice Chancellor, you must know how many professors, PhD holders, and other quality staff you must have lost in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. This brain drain is not good for us. But you can't stop someone from migrating if you pay some lecturers 195,000 naira. Pay lecturers, PhD holders, 500,000 naira, 700,000 naira. What do you want him to do with it? Because to change a tire of your vehicle, by the time you use that amount, what will remain? How do you feed your family when a bag of rice is between 60 and 120,000 naira? You pay some workers here 70,000 minimum wage. It is not even enough to buy a bag of rice. That is what partly leads to brain drain. So people must go where they feel there is greener pasture. Curriculum irrelevance. Many of the curriculum we have in Nigerian universities today make graduates not to be relevant in terms of acquisition of skills. This leave many of them unemployed or underemployed. Former Education Minister, Professor Tunde Adeniro, criticized this system for producing parasites and unemployable graduates. I've seen many of my employees, and they come and say they have masters, they want to be manager of my chambers. And I give them a simple letter to write, and they cannot write it. And the question is, how did you acquire your first degree? Not to talk of your master's degree. The university therefore produces some of these half-baked, even unbaked, unemployable graduates, because they rely on irrelevant curriculum brought from abroad, which does not meet our common needs in our indigenous system. Then we have the problem of corruption, politicization, and strikes in universities. Thank God for universities, private universities like BIU. A student can know when he starts school and when he will finish. I can tell you, no student in any public school in Nigeria can tell you when I start school in 2025, I will graduate in 2029. Because by the time ASU strikes, after ASU, SANU, after SANU, Nurses Association, after that, Labor, after that, NUC, after that, Pengassin, after that, NUPENG, after that, NUT, after that, even your motor park gas, they block the roads. By the time they finish this in the midst of courtism, you find a course that was supposed to be for 4 years, taking 6, 7, 8 years. So when I go along and I see some students come to me, I say, sir, you don't know me. I say, no, I can't recognize you. Oh, you lectured us constitutional law at Benson Idahosa University about 2004, 2005, 2006. We're already 18 years at the bar, 19 years at the bar. I know that university is sustaining, the university cycle is maintained, and academic excellence is being achieved. Poor research industry linkages, poor partnership, fragmented funding for applied research, weak intellectual property systems, and few incentives for commercialization. All of them hinder. Of course, we have weak university autonomy, where you are controlled. Either you have a centralized payroll system, IPPIS, or you have NUC breathing down your neck. Many students come to me every time to say, sir, we have graduated in the last 2 years from the Faculty of Law, BIU, UNIBEN, AAU, and all that, but law school cannot give us a space because there is no space. So this over-centralization, over-control by various boards limit university education and its expansion. Of course, global competitiveness is there. We don't have much of it in terms of competing globally with other universities. And you will see that only a few universities in Nigeria have gone through the global ranking by Times method, higher education. Times Higher Education, they rank universities globally. You can have Covenant University, Landmark University, ABU, Barrio University, UI, University of Benin, Fruto, Akure, Unilorin, Unilag. There are not many. Afeba Balola University. And I believe that sooner than later, BIU will be ranked by these Times Higher Education globally. So how do we reclaim our universities? Recommendations. 1, adequate funding and resource allocation to enable us to have modern infrastructures, digital libraries, research grants, and innovation hubs. 2, university industry synergy, what I earlier called the triple helix, where universities, industries, and the government collaborate in partnership to have a solid foundational complex. Then emphasis on research commercialization. We must emphasize research and try to commercialize part of our educational produce. For example, if you go to Afe Babalola University, they generate their own electricity. They don't rely on your national grid. They have their own electricity. They have their factories. They produce amala, elubo. They produce plantain flour. They produce their own water, their own poultry, their own piggery. Then they have another hub where these are now processed. So you have processed fish, processed pork meat, processed lamb meat, all of them within the university. When you go to that industrial hub, you will be amazed as to what you see. Plantations, mango plantations, orange plantations, pineapple plantations. So universities should be encouraged to do this, not just to come, teach, mark, graduate, and they go away. The curriculum must also be reformed. There must be innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology, which must be imbued with ethics. Then, of course, we must try to collaborate internationally. Then we must have revival of mentorship, discipline, and value-driven systems, so that we do not have a class of lecturers molesting students, female students sexually, female students being harassed by courtists, lecturers being harassed by courtists who have not passed their exams but who want them to be passed. A system that they call sorting, grade for sex or grade for money. Such cannot give us good education. Conclusion, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. I believe that the university, when rightly positioned, will serve as a multiplier of societal progress and the heartbeat of national destiny. It will preserve, expand, and transmit knowledge across generations, driving innovation, bringing about leadership, mirroring society's innovations, giving strength to capacity, thriving institutions, fueling creativity, employment, and progress. For Africa and Nigeria in particular, the stakes are even higher. To break cycles of dependency and underdevelopment, universities must be reclaimed and repositioned as true engines of transformation. This requires systemic reforms, consistent investment, and a cultural reevaluation of higher education. Strong universities not only produce employable graduates, but also generate solutions to national challenges. They foster inclusive societies and they uphold intellectual sovereignty and dignity. The truth is simple yet profound. A society's development is mirrored in the vitality of its universities. To strengthen universities, therefore, is to secure the future, invest in human capital, and expand the horizons of possibility. To neglect them is to doom tomorrow to mediocrity and decline. For Nigeria and Africa, genuine transformation rests on a clear imperative, and that is, universities must remain at the center, resourced, reformed, revered as catalysts of societal development. But I cannot add this lecture without saying one or two things about the citadel of learning where we are today, the Benson Idahosa University, BIU. The birth of this university was certainly not the invention of man's ambition, but the unfolding of a divine prophecy. Benson Idahosa University did not begin with classrooms and faculties, but it began with a voice. It was a voice that broke forth in 1978, addressing only one man, one individual, late Archbishop Benson Andrew Idahosa. May God bless his soul. In that year, 1978, education was still then the exclusive preserve of the federal government and state governments, courtesy of Decree number 33. The Lord God Almighty spoke what seemed unthinkable. Quote, "You shall raise a university for the glory of my majesty," unquote, the voice said. To the Archbishop, that voice was clear. It was not a dream within human reach. This was a feat so staggering that only God could perform it, and only faith could hold it. The Archbishop understood that obedience must precede fulfillment. Thus he began where the Lord directed. Out of the divine seed came the Word of Faith group of schools. This was an educational vision that grew into a shining model for future generations. This was proof that God's word does not fall to the ground. It's a case of John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Then came a new dawn. On the 5th of August, 1992, at precisely 4 o'clock in the morning, heavens interrupted the silence of the Archbishop's sleeping chamber. The Spirit of God stirred him from his rest and sat him upright. And the voice of the Lord came once more steady and irresistible, rehearsing his faithfulness. He said, "Did I not tell you I will take you across the nations? Behold, I have done it, and I am still doing it. Did I not tell you I will raise through you a Bible school for all peoples? I have done it. Did I not tell you I would open unto you the gates of television for the preaching of my word? I have done it. Did I not tell you I would establish through you a hospital of mercy and evangelism? I have done it." The voice continued to hammer Archbishop Idahosa. Then the voice finally commanded, "Now, hear me, my servant. You shall build a university, and I will surely bring it to pass. The men and women appointed to labor with you in this vision have already been called, and they are already within this ministry," unquote. So the vision of Benson Idahosa University was signed, sealed, and delivered. It was not by government decree or an edict. It was not by the counsel of men, nor the might of emperors. It was by the eternal word of God. So in 1992, despite the legal restrictions imposed by Decree number 33, Archbishop Idahosa pressed forward. Through the committee's secretary then, Deacon Michael Okagbari, he submitted a formal application to the NUC requesting permission to establish and run a private university in Benin City. Later that year, on the 12th of September, 1992, a grand foundation laying ceremony was held for what was then known as the Christian Faith University Institute of Continuous Learning. The then governor of Edo State, Chief John Okhuoya, was on hand with his executive to perform the function. So, the story of Benson Idahosa University, therefore, my final words,
the following faculties,
it's not the tale of brick and mortar alone. No. It is the unfolding of prophecy, the triumph of faith of man, and the steady labor of visionaries led by Archbishop Benson Idahosa, who dared to believe in the impossible. From its divine conception to the present standing, eminent standing of BIU amongst Nigerian universities as a producer of knowledge and skilled labor, BIU has shown itself to be more than a mere academic institution. BIU has therefore become a forge where character is refined, where intellect is sharpened, where leadership is birthed and molded. Its history bears witness to courage against restrictions, innovation in the face of limitation, and excellence secured by discipline and grace. In a nation wrestling with questions of leadership, values, and development, Benson Idahosa University stands out clearly as a citadel of hope. It stands out as light for the world to follow, not only in terms of human affairs, but in terms of godly affairs. BIU is not merely educating students, it is shaping a new generation of leaders whose competence is only matched by character, whose knowledge is closely guided by wisdom, and whose ambitions are anchored in responsibility to God and society. To speak of the prestigious university, and BIU University, therefore, Benson Idahosa University, is to speak of its destiny to remain a cradle for future leaders of the Nigerian nation, to serve as light to Nigeria's educational landscape, to serve as a compass for Nigeria's leadership, and to serve as a testimony of faith in God. Vision and excellence, when fused together, can build legacies that outlive time. That is why your motto, the motto of Benson Idahosa University, is both ecclesiastical and secular. It says academic excellence with godliness. Academic excellence with godliness. It takes from God and it takes from man. As I sit down, the Benson Idahosa University is a story of Genesis chapter 18, verse 14.